When I came to after the blow to the back of my head, my vision was blurry, like someone had smeared Vaseline over my eyes. The room spun slowly, and a dull ache throbbed at the base of my skull. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd fallen down the stairs or tripped over one of those goddamn garden tools again. But then I heard him speak. "It looks like you've become a big disappointment to your wife," he said, his voice smooth, almost amused. I blinked hard, trying to focus through the haze. A man stood above me, tall and lean, dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt that screamed money, money I didn't have. His smile was sharp, predatory, like he was enjoying this way too much. And there was something else in his expression, pity. Not for me, but for the situation. Like I was some sad little footnote in his life. That's why she told me she'd have to find another rich sucker. He tilted his head, studying me as if I were some kind of science experiment gone wrong. "And since you had that damn prenuptial agreement," he let the sentence trail off, letting me fill in the blanks myself. My stomach dropped. My heart started pounding so hard I could feel it in my ears. It wasn't supposed to be like this. Sure, things between me and Lisa hadn't been great lately, not since she started spending more time at work than at home, but I never thought. I never imagined. "She sent you." My voice cracked, barely louder than a whisper. I tried to sit up, but pain shot through my neck, and I realized my hands were tied behind my back. Panic surged through me, hot and electric. "What the hell is going on?" The guy chuckled, low and cruel. "Oh, come on, man. Don't act so surprised. You really didn't see this coming. She's been planning this for months. Said you were holding her back, that you weren't ambitious enough. Honestly, I think she just got bored." Bored. The word hit me like another blow to the head. All those late nights she worked, all those business trips she took, it made sense now. Everything clicked into place, ugly and final. But still, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. This wasn't Lisa. This wasn't the woman I married. "And what about you?" I spat, glaring up at him. My jaw hurt from talking, but I didn't care. "You're just gonna do her dirty work? Kill me so she can cash in?" He shrugged, casual as if we were discussing the weather. "Hey, don't look at me like that. I'm not the bad guy here. She's the one who wanted out. I'm just helping her get what she deserves." "What she deserves?" I barked out a bitter laugh despite the fear clawing at my chest. "She doesn't deserve anything. She's a liar and a cheat, and you're just her lapdog." His smile faltered for half a second before snapping back into place. "Careful, buddy. Insults won't save you." I swallowed hard, trying to think past the panic. Think, damn it. There had to be a way out of this. My eyes darted around the room, a basement, dimly lit by a single overhead bulb. Concrete walls, no windows. A metal toolbox sat on a nearby table, its contents spilling out, wrenches, screwdrivers, pliers. Nothing useful unless I could somehow get free. "Why are you even telling me all this?" I asked, stalling. "If you're gonna kill me, why bother explaining yourself?" He smirked again, crossing his arms. "Because it's poetic, don't you think? Letting you know exactly how worthless you are before you die. Besides, it's not like anyone's gonna believe you if you try to tell them later." Later. That word gave me a flicker of hope. Maybe there would be a later. Maybe I could survive this. "Lisa doesn't love you," I said suddenly, my voice steadier than I expected. "She doesn't love anyone but herself. You think she'll stick around once she gets what she wants? Once she's done using you?" For the first time, his confidence wavered. He frowned, shifting his weight from one foot to the other. "Shut up. She'll dump you just like she dumped me," I pressed on, desperate. "You're nothing to her. Just another pawn in her game." I said shut up. He kicked me hard in the ribs, and I grunted in pain, curling inward instinctively. But inside, I felt a spark of triumph. I was getting under his skin. Then, without warning, he grabbed a length of rope from the toolbox and knelt beside me. "Enough talk," he growled, looping the rope around my neck. My breath hitched as he tightened it, cutting off my air. Spots danced in front of my eyes, and I thrashed against my restraints, adrenaline flooding my veins. But instead of pulling tighter, he hesitated. Something in his expression shifted, doubt, maybe even regret. His grip loosened slightly, just enough for me to gasp in a lungful of air. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered, almost to himself. "I didn't sign up for this." Before he could finish, I headbutt him with everything I had left. Pain exploded across my forehead, but it was worth it. He stumbled backward, clutching his face, and I seized the opportunity. Twisting my body awkwardly, I managed to roll toward the toolbox. My bound hands fumbled blindly until they closed around something cold and metallic, a pair of pliers. With shaking fingers, I worked the tool against the ropes binding my wrists. It took forever, or maybe just seconds, but finally, they fell away. Gasping, I scrambled to my feet, grabbing the first thing I could use as a weapon, a heavy wrench. By the time he recovered, I was ready. When he lunged at me, I swung the wrench with all my strength, connecting solidly with his temple. He crumpled to the floor, unconscious. Breathing heavily, I stared down at him, my hands trembling. Part of me wanted to keep hitting him, to make him pay for what he'd done, to make Lisa pay. But I knew I couldn't stay here. I needed to get out, to call the police, to expose them both. As I staggered toward the stairs, I realized something. I might have lost Lisa, but I hadn't lost myself. Whatever happened next, I'd survive. Because unlike them, I still had a conscience. And that was something they could never take away from me. I stumbled up the stairs, each step feeling like a mile. My legs were shaky, my head pounding, and the wrench in my hand felt heavier with every second that passed. The basement door creaked open, revealing the dimly lit living room of what I realized was Lisa's lover's house. It wasn't familiar to me, she'd always been careful about keeping her two lives separate, but it didn't matter. All I cared about now was getting out alive. The front door was just a few feet away, but as I moved toward it, something caught my eye on the coffee table, a stack of papers neatly arranged next to an open laptop. Even from across the room, I could see Lisa's name scrawled at the bottom of one document, a life insurance policy, dated last month, with me listed as the beneficiary. A cold chill ran down my spine. This wasn't just some spur-of-the-moment plan, they'd been plotting this for weeks, maybe longer. My stomach churned as I stared at the evidence of their betrayal. For a moment, all I wanted to do was grab the documents and burn them, to erase any trace of Lisa's scheming, but then I remembered the unconscious man downstairs. No, these papers were proof. Proof that she'd tried to have me killed. Proof that she'd thrown away our marriage for greed and lies. I grabbed the stack of documents, shoving them into the inside pocket of my jacket. Then I snatched the laptop too, stuffing it under my arm before heading for the door. Every nerve in my body screamed at me to run, to get as far away from this place as possible, but as I stepped outside into the cool night air, I hesitated. What would happen if I called the cops? Would they believe me? After all, who was I? Just an ordinary guy with no money, no connections, and a wife who clearly thought I was expendable. And even if they did believe me, what then? Could I really put Lisa behind bars? Could I live knowing she'd go to prison because of this? But as much as I hated to admit it, I knew there was only one thing I could do. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers and dialed 911. "This is emergency services," came the calm voice on the other end. "What's your emergency?" I need help," I stammered, glancing back at the house. "There's been an assault. Someone attacked me, and I think they're planning to kill me." "Are you safe right now?" the operator asked urgently. "For now," I said, backing further away from the house. "But I don't know how long that'll last." "Stay on the line with me," she instructed. "Tell me your location." I rattled off the address, which I'd noticed on the mailbox as I fled the basement. The operator assured me that help was on the way, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I wasn't out of danger yet. What if Mr. Lapdog woke up while the police were still en route? What if Lisa showed up here looking for him, and found me instead? I decided not to wait around to find out. Clutching the laptop and the documents tighter, I hurried to my car, which was parked haphazardly in the driveway. My hands fumbled with the keys, but eventually, I managed to start the engine and peel out of there, tires squealing against the asphalt. As I drove, my mind raced faster than the speedometer. Where should I go? Home? No, that wasn't safe anymore. Lisa probably already knew something had gone wrong. She'd be watching for me, waiting to finish what she started. I needed somewhere she wouldn't expect, somewhere secure. And then it hit me, my brother's place. He lived a couple of hours away, tucked into a quiet suburb where nobody paid attention to anyone else's business. If I could make it there, I'd have time to figure things out, to decide what to do next. The drive felt endless, every shadow on the road making me jump. Every time a car passed me going the opposite direction, I half expected it to swerve and force me off the highway. But nothing happened. By some miracle, I made it to my brother's house without incident. When I knocked on his door, he opened it wearing sweatpants and a ratty t-shirt, looking like he'd just woken up. His expression shifted from sleepy confusion to alarm when he saw the state I was in, bloodied, bruised, clutching stolen evidence like my life depended on it. "What the hell happened to you?" he demanded, pulling me inside. "It's a long story," I muttered, collapsing onto his couch. "But trust me, you're not gonna believe it." Over the next hour, I told him everything, or at least as much as I could without sounding completely insane. He listened intently, occasionally shaking his head or muttering curses under his breath. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "So let me get this straight," he said slowly. "Your wife cheated on you, hired some guy to kill you, and now you've got physical proof of the whole thing. That's about the size of it, I replied grimly. He blew out a long breath. Jesus Christ, Mike. You've really stepped into the twilight zone, haven't you? Yeah, well, tell me about it, I said bitterly. Now what do I do? He thought for a moment, then shrugged. Turn it over to the cops. Let them deal with it. You've got enough evidence to nail both of them, right? I nodded reluctantly. As much as I wanted revenge, for the lies, for the betrayal, for the goddamn prenup, I knew he was right. Revenge wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't undo the years we'd spent together, the promises we'd made. All it would do is drag me down to their level. So early the next morning, I called the police again, this time from my brother's landline. They took my statement, collected the documents and laptop, and promised to investigate. Within days, they'd arrested Lisa and her lover, charging them both with conspiracy to commit murder. The media ate it up, a classic tale of greed and deceit, perfect for the evening news. But as for me, I stayed out of the spotlight, retreating into solitude while the storm raged on without me. Some days, I wondered if I'd ever feel normal again. Other days, I just felt numb, like I'd lost more than a wife, I'd lost a part of myself. Still, I reminded myself of one thing, I survived. Despite everything they threw at me, I walked away. And in the end, maybe that was the best revenge of all. Weeks turned into months, and life slowly began to settle back into something resembling normalcy, or at least as close to normal as it could get after everything that had happened. The trial dominated the headlines for weeks. Cheating wife plots husband's murder, love triangle turns deadly, ordinary man escapes death by inches. It was everywhere, on TV, in newspapers, even on social media. People seemed obsessed with my story, dissecting every detail like it was some kind of true crime drama. But I didn't watch the news anymore. I couldn't bear to see Lisa's face plastered across screens, her perfectly coiffed hair and rehearsed expressions masking the cold calculation beneath. Instead, I stayed holed up in my apartment, trying to piece together what was left of my life. My brother checked in on me regularly, bringing over groceries or just sitting with me while I stared blankly at the walls. He never pushed me to talk about it, but sometimes I did anyway, spilling out fragments of thoughts I couldn't keep bottled up. They're saying she might only get 10 years, I told him one evening, flipping through a newspaper someone had left behind at the coffee shop. 10 years. Can you believe that? My brother sighed, leaning back in his chair. She'll probably serve half that if she plays her cards right. Gets parole for good behavior. I clenched my fists so tightly the knuckles turned white. Good behavior? She plotted to kill me, man. How is that good behavior? He didn't answer because there wasn't an answer, not one that made sense, anyway. Justice wasn't supposed to be this arbitrary, this unfair. But here we were. The hardest part wasn't the anger, though. It was the emptiness. For years, Lisa had been the center of my world, the person I came home to, the person I shared my dreams and fears with. Losing her, even after everything, left a void I didn't know how to fill. At night, when the silence pressed down on me, I'd lie awake wondering if I'd ever trust anyone again. If I'd ever let myself love again. And yet, despite the pain, there were moments when I caught glimpses of something. Hope, maybe. Or at least the possibility of it. It started small, a text from an old friend inviting me to grab lunch, a neighbor striking up a conversation about the weather. People cared. Not everyone, but enough to remind me that not all connections are toxic. Some are real, genuine, worth holding on to. One day, about 6 months after the trial ended, I decided to take a walk around the park near my apartment. It was autumn, the air crisp and tinged with the smell of fallen leaves. Families strolled along the paths, kids laughed as they chased each other, dogs bounded happily on leashes. Life went on, even when yours felt like it had stopped. As I rounded a bend in the trail, I saw her, a woman sitting alone on a bench, sketchbook in hand. Her dark curls framed her face as she focused intently on the page, pencil moving swiftly. Something about her drew me in, a quiet energy that felt familiar yet new. I hesitated for a moment, then approached cautiously. Mind if I sit here? I asked, gesturing to the empty space beside her. She looked up, startled, then smiled softly. Sure. Go ahead. I sat down, glancing at her sketchbook. She'd drawn the trees lining the path, their branches twisting gracefully against the sky. That's really good, I said honestly. Thanks, she replied, closing the book gently. I'm Mia, by the way. Mike. We shook hands briefly, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt a spark of connection, not forced, not fake, but real. We talked for nearly an hour, sharing bits and pieces of ourselves. She told me she was an artist who worked freelance, designing book covers and illustrations. I told her I used to work in IT before everything fell apart. Neither of us pressed too hard, respecting the boundaries we both clearly needed. By the time we parted ways, exchanging numbers with tentative smiles, I realized I hadn't thought about Lisa once during our conversation. Over the next few weeks, Mia and I kept meeting, at the park, at coffee shops, at art galleries. Each encounter felt like stepping farther away from the darkness that had consumed me for so long. She didn't try to fix me or demand answers, she simply listened, offering support without judgment. Slowly, I began to open up, sharing snippets of my past, not all at once, but gradually, like peeling back layers of gauze over a wound. One rainy afternoon, as we sat together in her cozy studio apartment surrounded by canvases and paint-splattered easels, I finally told her the whole story. About Lisa, about the betrayal, about the basement and the wrench in the life insurance policy. When I finished, tears pricked at the corners of my eyes, but I blinked them away quickly. Mia reached over, taking my hand in hers. "You've been through so much," she said softly. "But you're still here. That says a lot about who you are." Her words stayed with me long after I left her apartment that night. For the first time in years, I felt like I might actually be okay. Like maybe the scars didn't have to define me, they could just be part of the story, reminders of how far I'd come. A year later, I stood beside Mia under a canopy of twinkling lights, reciting vows I meant with every fiber of my being. Friends and family cheered as we kissed, sealing our promise to build something beautiful together. As I held her close, I glanced toward the horizon, where the sun dipped low, casting golden hues across the sky. Life doesn't always give you happy endings, not the Hollywood kind, anyway. Sometimes, happiness sneaks up on you, fragile and uncertain, asking you to take a chance. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find the courage to say yes. Because no matter how broken you feel, no matter how deep the wounds run, the human heart has an incredible capacity to heal. To rebuild. To love again. And that's exactly what I did. Life with Mia was different in every way that mattered. Where Lisa had been calculated and self-serving, Mia was open and giving. She didn't play games or keep secrets, she wore her heart on her sleeve, unafraid to show vulnerability. And me? I learned to let my guard down too, to trust again, to believe that not everyone would betray me. But even as our relationship grew stronger, shadows of my past lingered. They weren't overwhelming anymore, just faint echoes that surfaced when I least expected them, a news headline about the trial, a chance encounter with someone who recognized my name, or the rare moments when insomnia dragged me back to that basement. The memories hadn't disappeared, they never would, but they no longer controlled me. With Mia by my side, I found ways to face them head-on instead of running away. Still, there were some loose ends I couldn't ignore. One evening, about 6 months after our wedding, Mia came home from her studio carrying a large envelope. Her brow was furrowed, and she looked more serious than usual. "This came for you today," she said, handing it over. "It's postmarked from the prison." My stomach dropped. I'd known this day might come. Lisa's lawyers had filed appeals, trying to overturn her conviction, but seeing her handwriting on the envelope made my chest tighten. For a moment, I considered throwing it away unopened. What could she possibly have to say that would matter now? Mia must have noticed my hesitation because she placed a reassuring hand on my shoulder. "You don't have to read it if you don't want to," she said softly. "But maybe it'll help you close the chapter for good." She was right, of course. So, after taking a deep breath, I tore open the envelope and pulled out the letter inside. It was written in Lisa's neat, precise cursive, the same handwriting I'd once found comforting but now felt cold and distant. "Dear Mike. I know I don't deserve your forgiveness. Hell, I don't even expect it. But I need to say this before it eats me alive. I was wrong. About everything. About you, about us, about what I thought I wanted. I convinced myself I deserved better, that you weren't enough, but the truth is, you were always more than I deserved. You trusted me, loved me, stood by me even when I gave you nothing in return. And I threw it all away because I was selfish and stupid. If I could go back, I would change everything. But I can't. All I can do is hope that someday, somehow, you'll find peace, and that you'll stop blaming yourself for what happened. None of this was your fault. I'm sorry, Mike. Truly. Lisa." For a long time, I just stared at the page, the words blurring together as emotions churned inside me. Anger. Sadness. Pity. Even a strange sense of relief. Part of me wanted to dismiss the letter as another manipulation, another attempt to ease her conscience. But deep down, I knew she meant it. Not because she deserved redemption, but because people, even broken ones, are capable of regret. When I finally looked up, Mia was watching me, her expression unreadable. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. "I think so," I said, folding the letter and setting it aside. "It's complicated. Do you forgive her?" The question caught me off guard. Forgiveness wasn't something I'd considered, not for Lisa, not for anyone involved in the mess that almost cost me my life. Could I forgive her? Did I even want to? "I don't know," I admitted. Maybe forgiveness isn't the point. Maybe it's about letting go. Mia nodded thoughtfully. Letting go sounds like a good start. And so, I did. I didn't respond to Lisa's letter, nor did I dwell on it. Instead, I tucked it away in a drawer, along with the rest of my past, and focused on building the future I'd promised Mia, and myself. Months later, we moved into a small house on the outskirts of town, surrounded by trees and quiet countryside. It was a fresh start, a place where neither of us carried baggage from our previous lives. On weekends, we painted walls, planted flowers in the garden, and laughed until our sides hurt over silly arguments about furniture placement. For the first time in years, I felt truly happy. Then, one crisp spring morning, I received a call from my lawyer. Lisa's appeal had been denied. She would serve her full sentence, minus time off for good behavior, which meant she'd likely remain behind bars for several more years. As I hung up the phone, I felt a strange mix of emotions, relief, vindication, and an unexpected pang of sadness. No matter what she'd done, she was still human. Still flawed. Still deserving of dignity, even if she'd forfeited my respect. That night, as Mia and I sat together on the porch watching the sunset, I told her about the call. "It's over," I said simply. "Really over." She smiled, leaning her head against my shoulder. "Good. Now we can focus on the next chapter." "The next chapter," I repeated, savoring the phrase. It sounded hopeful, promising. Like a blank page waiting to be filled. As the sky turned shades of pink and orange, I realized something important: healing doesn't happen all at once. It's a process, a journey with ups and downs, twists and turns. But with each step forward, the weight gets lighter. The scars fade. The heart grows stronger. And sometimes, if you're lucky, you find someone who helps you see the beauty in starting over. Years passed, and life unfolded in ways I never could have predicted. Mia and I welcomed a daughter into the world, a tiny bundle of joy who reminded us daily of the resilience of love and family. We named her Lily, a nod to new beginnings and growth after hardship. On Lily's 5th birthday, as we celebrated with balloons and cake in the backyard, I caught myself smiling more than I had in years. Watching her laugh, carefree and radiant, I felt a profound sense of gratitude, for survival, for second chances, for the woman beside me who had helped me rebuild my shattered world. Later that evening, as Mia and I tucked Lily into bed, she looked up at us with wide, curious eyes. "Daddy," she said sleepily, "tell me a story." I hesitated for a moment, then smiled. "Once upon a time," I began, sitting on the edge of her bed, "there was a man who went through some very hard times. He lost someone he loved, and for a while, he thought he'd never be happy again. But then, he met a kind and talented artist who showed him how to trust and love again. Together, they built a beautiful life filled with laughter, adventure, and lots of love." Lily grinned, snuggling deeper under the covers. "Did they live happily ever after?" "They sure did," I replied, kissing her forehead. "Because sometimes, even when things seem impossible, happiness finds a way." As I turned off the light and closed her bedroom door, I glanced at Mia, who was standing in the hallway with a soft smile. She reached for my hand, intertwining her fingers with mine. "Happily ever after," she whispered. "Yeah," I said, pulling her close. "Happily ever after." Life has a way of surprising you when you least expect it. Just when you think you found your rhythm, your peace, it throws something new into the mix. Something that forces you to adapt, to grow, to confront old fears in unexpected ways. For me, that moment came on an otherwise ordinary Tuesday morning about 3 years after Lily was born. I was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and scrolling through emails while Mia packed lunches for her and Lily. The sun streamed through the window, casting golden light across the countertops. It was the kind of quiet, contented morning we'd come to cherish. Then my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number flashing across the screen. Normally, I would have ignored it, but something about the area code caught my attention. It matched the prison where Lisa had been serving her sentence. "Who is it?" Mia asked, glancing over as I hesitated. "I don't know," I muttered, answering cautiously. "Hello. Mr. Mike Carter." The voice on the other end was clipped and professional. "This is Officer Daniels from Riverbend Correctional Facility. We need to speak with you regarding Lisa Marie Carter." My stomach clenched. "What's going on?" There was a pause, long enough to make my heart race. "Miss Carter passed away early this morning. She suffered complications during a medical procedure. I'm sorry for your loss." The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Dead. Lisa was dead. After everything she'd done, after all the pain she'd caused, I never imagined hearing those words would feel so heavy. I see," I stammered, struggling to process what I'd just been told. "Thank you for letting me know." When I hung up, Mia was staring at me, concern etched across her face. "What happened?" I shook my head, still reeling. "Lisa's gone. She died this morning. Mia set down the sandwich she'd been wrapping and came to sit beside me. Oh, Mike. I don't know how to feel, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. Relieved. Sad. Angry. All of it, maybe. She was complicated. Mia nodded, squeezing my hand. You don't have to figure it out right now. Just take a breath. We sat there in silence for a while, the weight of the news settling between us. Eventually, I called my brother to let him know, and he offered to come over later if I needed someone to talk to. But mostly, I spent the day lost in thought, replaying memories of Lisa, not just the betrayal, but the good times too. The laughter, the shared dreams, the moments when we were happy together. It wasn't fair to erase all of that because of how things ended. That evening, after putting Lily to bed, Mia and I sat outside under the stars. The air was cool, carrying the faint scent of blooming jasmine from the garden. For a while, neither of us spoke. Then Mia broke the silence. What will you do now? She asked gently. I shrugged, staring up at the sky. I don't know. Maybe nothing. Maybe write her obituary or visit her grave someday. She deserves closure, even if she didn't give me any. She gave you something, Mia said softly. She gave you the chance to survive, to build a life worth living. Her words struck a chord deep inside me. She was right. As much as Lisa's actions had nearly destroyed me, they'd also forced me to confront my own strength, my ability to rise above the ashes of what had burned. Without her betrayal, I might never have met Mia. Never have known the joy of raising Lily. Never have discovered who I truly was beneath the hurt. The next morning, I woke up with a sense of clarity I hadn't felt in years. I called the prison to arrange for Lisa's remains to be released to her family, or, failing that, to me. If no one else claimed her, I decided I would handle the arrangements myself. Not out of obligation, but out of respect. Everyone deserves to be remembered, even those who stray far from the path. A few weeks later, I stood alone at the cemetery on a gray, drizzly afternoon. Lisa's headstone was simple, a modest slab of granite engraved with her name, birth date, and the words beloved daughter. Standing there, I realized I didn't hate her anymore. Hate takes energy, effort, and I simply didn't have any left for her. Instead, I felt a strange sort of compassion, a recognition that she, too, had been flawed and human. I hope you found peace, I whispered, placing a single white rose on her grave. Wherever you are. As I walked back to my car, the rain began to ease, giving way to patches of sunlight breaking through the clouds. It felt symbolic somehow, a reminder that storms eventually pass, leaving room for brighter days. Months turned into years, and life continued its steady march forward. Lily grew taller, smarter, funnier, filling our home with endless laughter and curiosity. Mia and I celebrated anniversaries, traveled to new places, and built traditions that became the fabric of our family. And though Lisa's death lingered in the background, a faint echo of a chapter long closed, it no longer held power over me. One day, as I flipped through an old photo album with Lily on my lap, she paused at a picture of Lisa and me on our wedding day. Her smile was radiant, her eyes full of hope. Lily pointed to it, frowning slightly. "Who's that lady, Daddy?" she asked. "That's your Aunt Lisa," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "She was important to me once. Why don't we see her anymore?" I hesitated, then smiled. Because sometimes people make choices that change their lives, and ours, in big ways. But that doesn't mean we forget them. Or stop loving them. Lily tilted her head, considering this. "Do you miss her?" "Yes," I said honestly. "But not the way you might think. I miss the person she used to be, the person I hoped she'd stay. That's the Lisa I'll always remember." Satisfied with my answer, Lily turned the page, already distracted by another photo. Watching her, I felt a surge of gratitude, for the present I was living, for the future stretching ahead of us, and even for the past that had shaped me into the man I'd become. Because in the end, life isn't about avoiding pain or erasing mistakes. It's about learning from them, growing stronger, and finding beauty in the journey, even when the road gets rough. And so, with Mia by my side and Lily's laughter ringing in my ears, I stepped boldly into whatever came next. Ready to embrace whatever challenges, joys, or surprises awaited me. After all, I'd already faced the worst. Now it was time to live the best. Life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. Lily was thriving in school, Mia's art career was flourishing, and I'd finally started to feel like the past wasn't lurking around every corner, waiting to ambush me. The weight of Lisa's betrayal, her death, and everything that came after had begun to fade, not entirely, but enough that I could breathe freely again. Then one crisp autumn morning, as I sorted through the mail at the kitchen counter, an envelope caught my eye. It was plain white, unassuming, with no return address, but something about the handwriting sent a shiver down my spine. My name was scrawled across the front in familiar cursive, Mike Carter. My heart skipped a beat. That handwriting, it couldn't be. Could it? Mia, I called out, my voice tight. Do you recognize this? She glanced over from where she was helping Lily pack her backpack for school. Her brow furrowed as she studied the envelope. No, should I? I shook my head, unsure myself. Slowly, I tore it open, pulling out a single sheet of paper inside. As I unfolded it, my hands trembled. The words were typed, not handwritten, but they hit me like a freight train all the same. Dear Mike. If you're reading this, then my plan worked, or at least part of it did. By now, you've probably heard about my death. Let me assure you, it wasn't real. Necessary sacrifices sometimes are. I know you must hate me even more now, but before you write me off completely, hear me out. What happened between us wasn't personal, at least, not entirely. I made choices I thought would secure our future, even if they hurt us both in the process. You have no idea how many times I wished I could take it all back. But here's the thing, I didn't die because I couldn't bear the thought of leaving unfinished business behind. Specifically, you. I'm not asking for forgiveness or redemption. All I want is to make sure you're safe. There are people involved in this mess who won't stop until they get what they want, and trust me, you don't want to cross them. Be careful, Mike. Watch your back. If you care about your family, destroy this letter immediately and never speak of it again. Lisa. The room seemed to spin as I read the note over and over, each word sinking deeper into my chest like a stone. This couldn't be happening. Not again. Lisa was supposed to be gone, for good. Dead and buried, literally and figuratively. How could she still be alive? Mike. Mia's voice broke through my daze. She stepped closer, concern etched across her face. What is it? What's wrong? Wordlessly, I handed her the letter. Her eyes widened as she scanned the text, her lips parting in disbelief. Is this some kind of sick joke? She asked, looking up at me. A prank? I don't think so, I muttered, pacing back and forth. This is her handwriting on the envelope. And the tone, it's exactly how she used to talk when she wanted to manipulate me. But she's dead. Mia exclaimed. You went to her funeral, Mike. You saw her grave. I know, I said, running a hand through my hair. That's what makes this so impossible. Unless, my voice trailed off as a chilling thought occurred to me. Unless none of it was real. The medical procedure, the obituary, the burial. Mia's face paled. You're saying someone staged her death? It's the only explanation, I said grimly. But why? And who helped her pull it off? Before either of us could answer, the sound of tires crunching on gravel outside interrupted our conversation. We froze, staring at each other. No one ever visited without calling first, especially not at this hour. Stay here, I whispered to Mia, motioning for her to take Lily into the bedroom. She hesitated for a moment, fear flashing in her eyes, but then nodded and hurried away. Heart pounding, I moved cautiously toward the window, peeking through the blinds. A black sedan sat in the driveway, its engine idling. Two men in dark suits climbed out, their expressions unreadable. They glanced around briefly before heading toward the front door. Instinct kicked in. Whoever these people were, they weren't here for a friendly visit. I grabbed my phone, snapping a quick photo of the car and license plate just in case, then slipped quietly into the hallway. Mia and Lily were huddled in the bedroom, their faces pale but determined. We need to leave, I whispered urgently. Now. What about them? Mia asked, nodding toward the front door. They'll break in eventually, I said, already grabbing coats and shoes. We can't stay here. As quietly as possible, we crept out the back door, slipping into the woods behind the house. The air was cold, biting at my skin, but adrenaline kept me moving. We ran until we reached the edge of the property, where I'd parked my truck earlier that morning. Thank God I hadn't taken it into town. Get in, I urged, unlocking the doors. Once everyone was safely inside, I peeled out onto the road, glancing nervously in the rearview mirror. For now, we were alone, but I knew better than to assume we were safe. Where are we going? Mia asked, clutching Lily tightly in the seat beside me. I don't know yet, I admitted. Somewhere far away. Somewhere they won't find us. Lisa's warning echoed in my mind, there are people involved in this mess who won't stop until they get what they want. Who were they? What did they want? And why had Lisa faked her death to protect me? The questions swirled endlessly, but one thing was clear, whatever trouble Lisa had dragged me into wasn't over. Not by a long shot. And somehow, against all odds, I was right back in the middle of it. The highway stretched endlessly before us, a ribbon of asphalt cutting through fields and forests blanketed in autumn colors. My knuckles were white on the steering wheel, my eyes darting between the road ahead and the rearview mirror every few seconds. So far, we hadn't seen any sign of pursuit, but that didn't mean they weren't coming. Lily sat quietly in the back seat, clutching her stuffed rabbit and watching the scenery blur past. She didn't ask questions, not yet, but I could see the confusion in her wide eyes. Mia, meanwhile, stared out the passenger side window, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her silence spoke volumes. She was scared, angry, and trying to hold herself together for Lily's sake. Where exactly are we going? Mia finally asked after what felt like hours of tense quiet. I glanced at her briefly before focusing back on the road. Somewhere safe. Somewhere they won't think to look. And where's that? She pressed, her voice sharper this time. Mike, we can't just drive aimlessly forever. We need a plan. She was right, of course. But planning required answers I didn't have. Who were those men? What did they want with me? And why had Lisa gone to such lengths to fake her own death, only to send me a cryptic warning now? I don't know, I admitted reluctantly. But I can't take you two home until I figure this out. It's too dangerous. Mia sighed, frustration etched across her face. Dangerous how? Mike, you're not making sense. First that letter, then those guys showing up, none of it adds up. I know, I said, gripping the wheel tighter. But trust me, if Lisa went to all this trouble to protect us, there's something bigger going on here. Something bad. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the tires against the pavement filled the silence as the miles rolled by. Then, softly, Mia asked, "Do you think she's alive?" The question hung heavy in the air. I wanted to say no, to believe that Lisa's note was some cruel hoax designed to throw me off balance. But deep down, I couldn't dismiss the possibility. If anyone could orchestrate a fake death, it was Lisa. She'd always been resourceful, cunning even. Maybe too much for her own good. I don't know, I said again, quieter this time. But if she is, maybe she's the only one who can explain what's happening. Mia frowned but didn't argue further. Instead, she turned her attention to Lily, gently coaxing her into a game of I Spy to distract her from the tension radiating between us. For a while, the sound of their laughter provided a fragile sense of normalcy, a reminder of what I was fighting to protect. Hours later, we pulled into a small roadside motel tucked away in the middle of nowhere. Its neon sign flickered weakly above the office entrance, vacancy. Not ideal, but it would have to do for the night. I parked the truck around back, away from prying eyes, and ushered Mia and Lily inside quickly. After checking in under a fake name, we settled into a cramped room with threadbare carpet and a faint smell of mildew. It wasn't luxurious, but it was shelter and anonymity. For now, that was enough. As soon as the door clicked shut behind us, Mia turned to me, her expression serious. All right. Let's talk strategy. What's our next move? I hesitated, rubbing the back of my neck. We need information. About Lisa, about those men, about everything. Whatever mess she dragged me into, it's big enough that she faked her death to escape it. Which means we're dealing with people who won't hesitate to hurt us if they find us. So what do we do? Mia asked. Call the police. No, I said firmly. If Lisa was telling the truth, and I think she was, these aren't ordinary criminals. They're connected, powerful. Going to the cops might put us in more danger. Then what? Mia shot back, exasperated. Sit here and wait for them to show up. No, I said slowly, an idea forming in my mind. We go to her. To Lisa. Mia blinked, startled. You think she's still alive? It's worth finding out, I replied. If she sent that letter, she must have known I'd be targeted. Maybe she left clues somewhere, a trail to follow. Something to help us stay safe. Mia looked skeptical but nodded. Okay. Where do we start? The house, I said. Her old place. If anyone knows anything about her plans, or her disappearance, it'll be there. The next morning, we drove cautiously toward Lisa's childhood home, a modest ranch-style house nestled in a quiet suburb. It had been years since I'd set foot inside, but I remembered the layout well enough. More importantly, I knew Lisa kept secrets hidden there, things she thought no one else would ever find. When we arrived, the house appeared abandoned, its windows dark and curtains drawn. A rusted "For Sale" sign leaned crookedly in the yard, half buried in weeds. Still, I approached cautiously, scanning the area for signs of surveillance or traps. Nothing seemed out of place. Using a spare key I'd once made during happier times, I unlocked the front door and ushered Mia and Lily inside. The air was stale, carrying the faint scent of dust and neglect. Furniture lay shrouded in sheets, creating ghostly silhouettes in the dim light filtering through the blinds. Spread out, I instructed Mia in a low voice. Look for anything unusual, papers, notes, anything that might point us in the right direction. We searched methodically, room by room, turning over furniture, rifling through drawers, and peeling back dusty photo frames. At first, it seemed like a dead end, nothing but empty spaces and forgotten memories. But then, in the attic, I found something unexpected. Tucked beneath a loose floorboard was a small metal box, its surface scratched and tarnished with age. Inside, I discovered a stack of documents, a flash drive, and a handwritten note addressed to me. Mike. If you're reading this, then things have gone worse than I hoped. I'm sorry for dragging you into my mess, but you deserve to know the truth. These files contain everything: names, dates, transactions. Use them wisely. And remember, trust no one. Lisa. My hands trembled as I flipped through the papers. Bank statements, property deeds, emails referencing shadowy figures with code names, it was all there. Evidence of a conspiracy so vast it made my head spin. Whoever Lisa had crossed, they weren't playing games. What is it? Mia asked, appearing in the doorway. This, I said, holding up the flash drive. This is why Lisa disappeared. And why they're after me. Mia's eyes widened. What does it mean? It means, I said grimly, that we're in deeper than I realized. And unless we're careful, we won't make it out alive. The weight of the flash drive in my hand felt heavier than it should have. It wasn't just a piece of metal and circuitry, it was a key to something dangerous, something that could either save us or destroy us completely. I stared at it, my mind racing with possibilities. What did Lisa expect me to do with this? Hand it over to the authorities? Leak it to the press? Or use it as leverage against whoever was hunting us? Mike, Mia said softly, pulling me out of my thoughts. What now? I glanced at her, then at Lily, who sat cross-legged on the dusty attic floor, clutching her rabbit and watching us with wide eyes. She didn't understand what was happening, not fully, but she could sense the tension hanging thick in the air. We need to get out of here, I said finally, slipping the flash drive into my pocket. This place isn't safe anymore. But where do we go? Mia asked, frustration creeping into her voice. You said yourself we can't trust anyone. The police, strangers, hell, even Lisa couldn't be trusted. I don't know yet, I admitted, running a hand through my hair. But staying here isn't an option. Whoever's after us will figure out we came looking for answers. And when they do, they'll come for us. Mia sighed, glancing down at Lily protectively. Fine. But we need a plan. A real one. Not just running blindly. She was right. We needed direction, and fast. As much as I hated to admit it, Lisa's cryptic note echoed in my mind, trust no one. If we were going to survive this, we'd have to rely on ourselves, and whatever secrets were buried in the files she'd left behind. Back at the motel later that evening, I plugged the flash drive into my laptop, Mia hovering anxiously over my shoulder. The screen flickered to life, revealing folder after folder of encrypted documents, spreadsheets, and photos. My stomach churned as I scrolled through them. Names of powerful people, politicians, CEOs, crime bosses, were listed alongside dates, transactions, and incriminating details. Blackmail material. Evidence of corruption reaching far beyond anything I'd imagined. What is all this? Mia whispered, her voice trembling. It's everything, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. Lisa must have stumbled onto something huge, a conspiracy involving some seriously dangerous people. This, I gestured toward the screen. This is why they wanted her silenced. And why they're after me now. Lily slept soundly on the bed behind us, oblivious to the storm brewing around her. For a moment, I envied her innocence. How simple life must seem to her, even amidst chaos. So what do we do with it? Mia asked. If these people are as dangerous as you say, releasing this stuff could put us in even more danger. I don't think Lisa expected me to release it outright, I replied thoughtfully. This is leverage. Insurance. Something to keep them at bay until we can figure out our next move. Mia frowned. And if they find us before we figure it out? They won't, I said firmly, though I wasn't entirely sure I believed it myself. We'll stay off the grid. Change locations frequently. Keep moving. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was all we had. For now. 2 days later, we were on the road again, heading west under the cover of darkness. I traded the truck for a nondescript sedan using cash at a sketchy used car lot, hoping to avoid drawing attention. We stopped only for gas and food, keeping interactions with others to a minimum. Paranoia gnawed at me constantly. Every passing car seemed suspicious, every stranger a potential threat. One night, while driving through a desolate stretch of highway surrounded by endless desert, my phone buzzed unexpectedly. It was an unknown number, and for a split second, I considered ignoring it. But something compelled me to answer. Hello. I said cautiously. Mike. The voice on the other end was low, distorted almost beyond recognition, but unmistakably familiar. It's me. My blood ran cold. Lisa. There was a pause, followed by a soft chuckle. Surprise. How? Where are you? I demanded, gripping the phone so tightly my knuckles turned white. What the hell is going on? I'm alive, she said simply. And I'm sorry for putting you in this position. But you're in too deep now, Mike. You've seen the files. You know what's at stake. You faked your death, I spat, anger boiling over. You lied to everyone, including me. Again. Yes, she admitted without hesitation. And I'd do it again if it meant keeping you and Lily safe. Listen to me carefully, Mike. They're closer than you think. You need to disappear, completely. Start fresh somewhere they'll never look for you. And where's that supposed to be? I snapped. Some remote island. A cave in the mountains. Canada, she said bluntly. Cross the border. Lay low. I'll send instructions once you're there. I opened my mouth to argue, but Lisa cut me off. Don't try to fight them, Mike. You won't win. Just trust me this once. Please. Her tone softened on the last word, and for a brief moment, I heard traces of the woman I'd once loved, the one who'd promised to stand by me no matter what. But that version of Lisa was long gone, replaced by someone willing to manipulate and deceive to survive. I don't owe you anything, I said bitterly. Not after everything you've done. No, she agreed quietly. You don't. But you owe it to Lily. To Mia. Protect them, Mike. That's all that matters now. Before I could respond, the line went dead. I stared at the phone in stunned silence, my mind reeling. Canada. Disappearing. Starting over. Was that really our only option? Beside me, Mia stirred in her sleep, murmuring softly. In the back seat, Lily shifted in her blanket cocoon, her breathing steady and peaceful. Their faces reminded me of what was truly important, not revenge, not justice, but survival. I made up my mind. Turning the car northward, I accelerated into the night, leaving behind the life we'd known and stepping into the unknown. Because sometimes, the hardest choices are the ones that save you. The Canadian border loomed ahead like a gateway to another world, one we hoped would offer safety, anonymity, and a chance to start over. But crossing it wasn't going to be easy. Not with the weight of Lisa's secrets in my pocket and the fear that someone might already be watching our every move. We approached the checkpoint just before dawn, the sky painted in hues of gray and pink. My hands gripped the steering wheel tightly as I slowed the car, rolling down the window when a uniformed officer stepped up to inspect us. He was young, his face impassive but professional. Passports, he asked, glancing at each of us in turn. I handed over the fake documents I'd painstakingly prepared during our journey north, identities crafted for a family that didn't exist. Mia and Lily sat quietly, their expressions neutral but tense. For a moment, the officer studied the papers, flipping through them methodically. Then he looked back at us. Reason for visiting Canada, he asked. Vacation, I replied smoothly, meeting his gaze without flinching. Just wanted to see the sights. He nodded slowly, his eyes lingering on Lily for a fraction of a second longer than necessary. Enjoy your stay, he said finally, handing the passports back and waving us through. As we drove away, relief washed over me, but only briefly. Getting across the border was one thing, staying hidden was another entirely. We weren't out of danger yet. Not by a long shot. A few hours later, we arrived at a small, isolated cabin nestled deep in the woods. It was rustic and unassuming, exactly the kind of place no one would think to look for us. Lisa had sent coordinates via an encrypted message shortly after our phone call, along with instructions to wait for further contact. The cabin was stocked with food, firewood, and basic supplies, enough to last us several weeks if we rationed carefully. This is it, I said, turning off the engine and stepping out into the crisp morning air. Home sweet home, for now. Mia helped Lily out of the car, her expression wary as she took in the surroundings. How long do you think we'll have to stay here? As long as it takes, I replied grimly. Until Lisa gives us more information, or until we figure out what to do next. Inside, the cabin was Spartan but functional. A wood-burning stove provided heat, and a generator powered a single light bulb hanging from the ceiling. There was no Wi-Fi or cell service, which meant we were cut off from the outside world, a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it kept us safe from prying eyes. On the other, it left us feeling utterly alone. That first night, as Mia tucked Lily into bed in the tiny loft above the main room, I sat by the stove, staring into the flames. The flash drive rested on the table beside me, its contents still unreadable without the decryption key Lisa promised to send. I couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out, that whoever was hunting us wouldn't stop until they found us. Are you okay? Mia asked softly, joining me after ensuring Lily was asleep. I don't know, I admitted, rubbing my temples. This whole thing feels unreal. Like we're living in some kind of spy movie. Except there's no happy ending guaranteed. Mia placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. We'll get through this. Together. Whatever happens, we've got each other. Her words brought a flicker of warmth to my chest, but the gnawing uncertainty remained. What if Lisa's plan failed? What if those people caught up to us before we could disappear completely? And most importantly, what if trusting Lisa again was the biggest mistake of all? 3 days passed in relative quiet. We fell into a routine, gathering firewood, preparing meals, and keeping Lily entertained with stories and games. Despite the circumstances, she seemed content, blissfully unaware of the danger lurking just beyond the trees. For her sake, I tried to stay positive, to project calmness even when my mind raced with worst-case scenarios. On the 4th morning, a soft knock at the door shattered the fragile peace. My heart leapt into my throat as I grabbed a flashlight defensively, creeping toward the entrance. Through the peephole, I saw a hooded figure standing on the porch, their face obscured. "Who's there?" I called out sharply. "It's me," came a familiar voice, muffled but unmistakable. "Lisa." My stomach churned with conflicting emotions, anger, disbelief, and a reluctant sense of relief. Slowly, I opened the door, stepping aside to let her in. She looked thinner than I remembered, her features drawn and weary. Her once immaculate appearance was replaced by jeans, a hoodie, and boots caked with mud. "You shouldn't be here," I hissed, closing the door behind her. "If anyone followed you." "No one followed me," she interrupted, pulling back her hood. "I'm careful, Mike. Always have been." Mia emerged from the bedroom, her eyes narrowing as she took in Lisa's presence. "What are you doing here?" she demanded, her tone icy. "I came to deliver the decryption key," Lisa said, holding up a small USB stick. "And to explain everything." "Forget the explanation," I snapped. "Start talking. Now." Lisa sighed, sinking onto the edge of a chair. "All right. Here's the truth, the files on that flash drive expose a global network of corruption, politicians, corporations, organized crime. People who will do anything to protect their interests. When I discovered it, I became a liability. So I faked my death and went underground to gather evidence. And you dragged Mike into this, why?" Mia pressed, crossing her arms. "Because I trusted him," Lisa said simply. "And because he deserves to know the truth about what happened, and why." Her gaze shifted to me, searching for understanding. "I never wanted any of this to happen, Mike. But now that it has, we need to finish what I started. Together." I stared at her, torn between resentment and a grudging admiration for her determination. She'd risked everything, including her life, to uncover the truth. Was it selfish? Absolutely. But it was also brave. "What happens next?" I asked finally. Lisa leaned forward, her expression deadly serious. "You release the files. Expose them all. Once the world sees what they've done, they won't dare come after you." "And if they do?" Mia countered. "They won't," Lisa said firmly. "Publicity is the only weapon we have against them. Trust me, it works." For a moment, none of us spoke. The weight of her plan settled heavily in the room, impossible to ignore. Finally, I nodded. "Fine," I said. "Let's do it." But deep down, I couldn't shake the feeling that releasing the files wouldn't end this nightmare, it would only escalate it. Because sometimes, the truth comes at a cost too high to pay. The plan was simple: release the files, expose the conspiracy, and disappear into obscurity. At least, that's what Lisa had promised. But as we prepared to upload the decrypted documents to a secure whistleblower platform she'd arranged, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The pieces didn't quite fit. Lisa sat at the kitchen table in the cabin, typing furiously on her laptop while Mia kept watch by the window. Lily played quietly in the corner, oblivious to the tension crackling through the room. Every so often, Lisa would glance up at me, her expression unreadable, but there was something about her demeanor, a quiet intensity, that made my skin crawl. "Almost done," she said finally, leaning back in her chair with a satisfied smile. "Once this goes live, it'll spread like wildfire. They won't know what hit them." I nodded stiffly, still uneasy. "And then what?" "We just vanish." "Exactly," Lisa replied, closing the laptop. "New identities, new lives. You'll be free." Her words sounded hollow, rehearsed. My instincts screamed at me to question her further, but before I could, Mia interrupted. "What about you?" she asked sharply. "What happens to you after this?" Lisa hesitated, her smile faltering for the briefest moment. "I'll take care of myself. Don't worry about me." Mia opened her mouth to argue, but I silenced her with a subtle shake of my head. Whatever doubts I had, now wasn't the time to voice them, not with the clock ticking and potential threats closing in. By nightfall, the files were uploaded. Within hours, news outlets around the world began reporting on the scandal, naming names and exposing decades of corruption. Social media erupted with outrage, protests broke out in major cities. It was chaos, but exactly the kind of chaos Lisa had predicted would shield us from retaliation. Or so I thought. 2 days later, as we packed our belongings and prepared to leave the cabin, a knock came at the door again. This time, I approached cautiously, peering through the peephole. To my surprise, it wasn't one of them. It was a man in a suit holding a badge, a Canadian federal agent. "Open up," he called out firmly. "We need to talk." My heart sank. Had they traced the leak back to us already? Reluctantly, I let him in. He scanned the room quickly, his eyes narrowing when they landed on Lisa. "Lisa Carter," he said, his tone cold. "You're under arrest." "What?" I blurted, stepping between them. "For what?" "For orchestrating the largest blackmail scheme in history," the agent replied, pulling out handcuffs. "She didn't expose those people, Mr. Carter. She used you to frame them." The room seemed to tilt as the truth crashed over me like a tidal wave. Lisa hadn't been fighting the conspiracy, she'd been running it. The files weren't evidence against anyone except the innocent victims she'd set up to take the fall. And I had unwittingly helped her execute her plan. "No," I whispered, turning to Lisa. "Tell me this isn't true." She met my gaze steadily, her expression devoid of remorse. "It's complicated, Mike." "Complicated?" I shouted, incredulous. "You lied to me, again. Used me, again. How could you do this?" "Because I needed someone I could trust," she said simply, almost apologetically. "Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions." As the agent led her away, I felt a mixture of betrayal and fury unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Once again, Lisa had manipulated me, dragging me into her web of deceit. Only this time, the stakes were higher than ever. Weeks passed in a haze. The fallout from the scandal dominated headlines worldwide, destroying countless lives, including mine. Though I wasn't implicated directly, the association with Lisa tainted everything. My reputation, my career prospects, even my relationships suffered irreparably. But the worst part was realizing how easily I'd been played. Again. Despite everything I'd learned, I'd allowed myself to trust her one last time, and it had cost me dearly. Then, one evening, as I sat alone in a rented apartment miles away from the cabin, a package arrived in the mail. No return address, no note, just a small envelope containing a single flash drive. Curiosity got the better of me, and I plugged it into my computer. On the screen appeared a video message, a recording of Lisa, seated in what looked like a prison cell. Her face was pale, her eyes weary, but there was a flicker of defiance in her expression. "Mike," she began, her voice steady. "If you're watching this, then I'm either dead or rotting in here. Either way, I owe you an explanation." She paused, taking a deep breath. "Everything I did, the fake death, the files, the setup, it wasn't just for power or money. It was for Lily." I froze, staring at the screen in shock. "They were coming for her, Mike," Lisa continued. "A rival faction within the conspiracy wanted leverage over me, and they saw her as the perfect target. I faked my death to keep her safe, but I knew it wouldn't be enough. So I gave them something bigger to focus on. Something that would make them forget about her forever." Tears welled in her eyes as she leaned closer to the camera. "I've made a lot of mistakes, Mike. Hurt a lot of people. But protecting Lily, that's the one thing I got right. Please, don't hate me for it." The video ended abruptly, leaving me stunned. For years, I believed Lisa's actions were motivated purely by selfishness. But now, faced with this revelation, I realized the truth was far more complex and heartbreaking. She'd sacrificed herself, for Lily. For our daughter. In that moment, I understood two things clearly. First, that Lisa had always been capable of love, however twisted and misguided it may have been. And second, that forgiveness isn't about excusing someone's actions, it's about accepting their humanity, flaws and all. As I closed the laptop, I glanced at a photo of Lily sitting on the desk. Her bright smile reminded me of why I'd fought so hard to survive, to protect her, no matter the cost. Whatever happened next, I vowed to honor Lisa's final act of selflessness. Because in the end, she hadn't just saved Lily, she'd given me a chance to truly start over. And that was a gift worth cherishing.